What's crazy to me is how they based the mold for Count Orlok's head on your head.
We watched a movie.
We just walked out a movie.
We watched a brand new Egg.
Yes, as Avery talked about prior to the screening.
Well, we liked our term Flandangos from Mike Flanagan projects, so obviously a Robert Eggers project would be an egg.
And now they are all eggs.
He laid us a fresh one this Christmas.
Farm fresh egg. It's Robert Eggers, a director. If I got it correct, I think all his movies are The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman.
Yeah, he probably has whatever his student film was that someone's going to say is the best movie and be wrong, but yeah.
So those are the big ones.
And this was his first movie with no the, so we should start with that.
That's true. There's no the. It's not the Nosferatu.
It's not the Nosferatu, but it is Nosferatu.
And before we even talked about the movie itself, I want to talk about eggs, Robert Eggers, for a moment. Because it kind of plays into our theater experience and a general confusion I have about this movie. Robert Eggers, eggs.
Yeah.
They're not accessible films.
No.
The Witch and The Lighthouse are, I think, two of the best horror movies of the 2010s. They're fantastic masterpieces. They're super small. They're super contained. No huge names. Like The Lighthouse said Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, but it's like passion project.
Yeah,
they're not
Anya Taylor-Joy, but that was like she wasn't that famous yet.
So they're small, intimate films. They're inaccessible. They use period-specific dialogue. They use period-specific costumes.
Very immersive. They're very atmospheric,
slow,
and moody.
I see, Nate. You're fond of me lobster.
What most people, I would assume, would call boring. And if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. But they are a very specific style of horror film that I loved, and horror buffs generally loved, but never broke into the mainstream. People have heard about those movies, but they were not like blockbusters. Then The Northman came out, which was an egg.
Yep.
It was an egg through and through. You and I both enjoyed it.
I loved it.
You liked it even more than I did. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite of his, but it was good. But it is an egg still. It was inaccessible. It was dark, slow, long.
Very period accurate. Very brooding.
Dialect.
Very violent. Really gross, gory, violent.
Very inaccessible.
Yeah.
And that movie was received pretty well, but box office did terrible.
Yeah.
Which I could have told anyone would have happened, because
It was a huge budget. He leveraged The Witch, which was free, and overperformed into getting this super expensive movie made that I thought was brilliant, but obviously no one's going to go see it.
I thought that would be obvious.
Yeah.
And then Nosferatu comes out, which when they announced it, I thought, okay, it's going to be small, intimate. It's going to be like The Witch, but it's going to be vampire. It's not.
No.
It's huge, big names.
2.5 hours long.
Super huge budget, super vast, expansive sets. Clearly cost a ton of money. The marketing on it was insane.
Yep.
And it is now like sold out in theaters across North America.
We tried to go on cheap night, which is Tuesday, and the theater was sold out, and this is a month after release. So then we went on the next night, which is like the night after cheap. It's a Wednesday, which no one would go. Theater was full.
Full theater.
Absolutely full.
Let me say that. I guess I'll get it out of the way. I like this movie. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I have frustrations with it. I think it's like obviously very well put together movie. There's things I like, there's things I didn't like. Everyone in our theater seemingly hated this movie.
Yeah, which you said coming out, you could have told all of them they would.
Because who's gonna you have to be like a weirdo to want to see a movie like this. It's long, it's like all his other movies.
Yeah.
Why did everyone go see this? I thought after The Northman, there's no way he gets a big budget bomb again. But he got another big budget one, and it's like selling theaters out, and I don't understand why.
Well, it's because of the name recognition of Nosferatu. All those people whose great-grandparents saw the 1922
You don't want to miss it, because then when they do the team-up film in the next one, you'll have missed the origin.
Russell Crowe comes out.
Because that's my biggest thing. Yeah, I guess we'll start the discussion. I do not understand how this has become like a cultural moment movie, why anyone is treating this as like a movie you have to see more than The Witch or The Lighthouse, which are movies people largely ignored and left to the horror nerds.
There's been some kind of culture shift where people are interested in going to see like Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think is more accessible and more broadly appealing, but was an example of a movie that is really weird, but then everyone went and saw it and most people had a good time.
The Substance is a very similar thing. If I watched it, I would almost say that movie was tailor-made for me. but I would assume that no one else is going to enjoy this, or probably not going to watch this.
I wouldn't recommend it to a lot of people. Yeah.
But it's like become as mainstream success. Everyone and their mom's seen it. It's winning awards. So maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe people are opening their minds to weirder movies. Clearly they don't always like them. I mean, this movie's being generally well received, even by audiences. I think Rotten Tomatoes, I was curious. I thought it might be like 20% audience, 90% critical, but it was actually pretty high on both.
Yeah, and I looked on IMDb. It's actually his highest rated one there, which is usually somewhat reliable, but that's mostly because his other ones are so low. The Lighthouse is like a 7, which is insane.
The Lighthouse, I think, is his best movie. I think it's like a masterpiece. But so yeah, I don't know why this movie is a mainstream success financially.
You tell us. No, if you're watching this channel, you're a weirdo.
You probably
like us.
would have seen it anyways, regardless of mainstream success.
Go ask your normal friends to come comment.
Yeah,
please.
the people that don't watch channels like this, ask them why they went to see Nosferatu. I wanted to address that. I don't understand it. I'd love for people's thoughts because it genuinely confuses me. But anyway, we watched this in a sold-out movie theater.
Yep.
I think we're the only 2 people in that theater that like this movie.
It seems that way. There was a lot of people like getting up a lot and dropping stuff and talking.
Yeah.
And
well, I don't want to assume. I liked it, but I do have criticisms. How did you feel about this?
I feel exactly the same way I felt when we watched Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992 because it's the exact same thing. And that was that I didn't like it that much, but I respect that it was really creative and a lot of very competent work went into it. But it just didn't really speak to me. And I'm not saying it is the same film. Like, it's definitely very stylistically different.
Yeah.
But it did a lot of the same things, and I feel exactly the same way, which is just like,
Okay. I'm definitely the coldest on it of his 4 films I've seen.
It's the 4th best egg. I think that's set in stone.
But yeah, I think it's a movie that I appreciate more than I liked. It sounds like you're in a similar camp.
I mean, my biggest thing is that I think it was way too long.
It needed to be cleaned up a bit.
Yeah.
Because I guess we'll start, something I really liked, I found the beginning very compelling.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is Dracula, the story of Dracula. The story of Dracula is based on this, and then they've both influenced each other back and forth. It's inseparable. The story of Nosferatu and Dracula are synonymous. So you know what the opening's gonna be. You have to go deliver this thing to this count in these spooky mountains. But I was genuinely hooked. I thought it was it's such a simple premise, but it's so compelling. Of like, you're interested in what's the castle gonna be like? How is this guy gonna make it? There's seeing the castle for the first time and all the way they set up him approaching the castle and things getting more surreal and more dreamlike was done beautifully. And I loved the whole part in the castle. I was engrossed when he has his first meeting with the Count. It is so engrossing. But then the movie very gradually post-castle just kind of draws out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in the middle and the end that if you ask me to summarize, I don't really know what exactly. There's a lot of just scenes of people talking in Victorian mansions.
Yeah, cut Aaron Taylor Johnson and his wife entirely.
Yeah.
They didn't bring anything except 40 minutes of
dialogue. I assume a lot of these issues, you could say it's from the original.
Oh yeah, I know you need 10 hours to do the book, and they obviously, the whole Voyage of the Demeter thing was like 6 minutes, and that was kind of interesting actually, because it was so fast. But there were definitely, this felt like cramming too much material in. And I think there were a lot of things I really liked, and I'm going to talk about them, but I think fundamentally my problem is that if I know the story and I know all the beats, you can't take your time. Because the only thing that's compelling me is when like something very creative is happening, or when Willem Dafoe's on screen.
Who's the MVP of the movie?
Who's the MVP of the movie. But neither of those things are enough for this to be 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Just do it. This needs to be tight and snap along, because if you're watching this, you know the whole story. So like, just focus on the visually interesting creative things, which were amazing. Like there were some really, really great moments and some very cool storytelling. And of course, all of Robert Eggers' films are just technically like masterpieces. Yeah. But just these 30-minute scenes of them describing the plot that I already know while just standing in a mansion, just cut that out. Just cut it out. That's not what we're doing here. Make this 90 minutes.
There very well could be like a 90-minute masterpiece in this.
I think so.
When it gets to that point of like, you have 3 nights, and on the 3rd night you'll have to, and I was like, whenever a narrative device goes into, this is the number of times it's going to happen, so then you know there will be nothing that happens until the last one. I'm always like, can it just be tomorrow? Why is it 3?
Completely agree. That was something I really lauded The Substance for, is that every time I thought The Substance was setting into like, okay, I get it, it immediately changed course.
Yeah, you did never find that pattern.
No, and I was really kind of hoping this film, and I think that's kind of what dragged the second half down for me a little bit, is just that I was hoping for something to break from the most obvious rollout of the rest of the movie.
Which I guess it can't,
No.
really.
I mean, yeah,
the
kind of.
story set, well, creatively, but from a plot perspective, assuming they want to be true to the original story.
Which clearly that's a priority of his. I was holding out hope for like a Inglourious Bastards type ending where something just totally off the wall happens.
Yeah.
I think you could have worked that in. That was not what he was trying to do.
No.
But like when they were just going through the motions of like Willem Dafoe walks up to the coffin, he's like, I got it. It's like, nice. And it's like, he's good in the sunlight. And it's like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I know all this.
Yeah, that part I actually found more compelling. I think it was a very strong beginning.
Yeah.
Extremely engrossing, and I liked the climax quite a bit. I found it a good emotional payoff.
That was visually very good.
Yeah, but that middle swath, there's
Yeah.
so much to be tidied up.
Its desire is to consume all life on Earth.
It brings me to one of my things I want to talk about, which is that I do think this is a really excellent reboot or remake.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to remake a story that's this well known, you kind of have two options. Because you can't just make it the same way it was originally done, obviously.
Right.
You can make it a twist on it, right? Like a stylistic twist or
What was that Romeo and Juliet movie from the
yeah,
90s?
stuff
Something
like that. But that's what everyone's done with Dracula
Yeah.
forever, because it's like the most well-known story of all time, including Nicholas Hoult in Renfield.
Yeah.
Like this literally, that actor has done this within the last year.
Fair.
So like, turning the Dracula story into a fun twist on Dracula is not going to work. Telling it the straight way isn't going to work. This almost felt like he wanted to bring it back to like its essence.
Which is, interestingly enough, that's exactly what we did with The Northman, because that's Hamlet, but
Yes.
very, like, stripped all the Shakespeare out of
everything
it, and
out.
it's the actual cavemen.
Yeah.
Not cavemen, Vikings.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like this was as interesting of a play on it as The Northman
I don't think it
was.
worked, but I appreciate that the intent was like, what if we make such a faithful adaptation of the source material that it almost you could almost treat this as the original, and everything else is like the spin on this. This is like take it back to its like primeval roots with almost no influence from any adaptation since. If we were pretend you were basing it on the original text, the original intent. It felt like that.
It was that.
Effectively that. It also meant a lot of it was kind of boring.
Yeah.
But it was.
I'm pretty confident it was the best version of the Dracula book ever put to screen, probably. I mean, I haven't seen all 90 of them, but like...
Yeah, I do love Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know you don't. I think that was a more entertaining adaptation of this story, but I thought it was cool. And like, I'm not interested in watching Dracula again. So the only thing that got me in the seats was it's an egg.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to make it super stripped down and scary and bare bones. And I think the movie suffered a bit for that, but I do think that was the right way to approach it. Because otherwise, why do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that for me, it was just... It all compounded to make the fact that it was too long worse, because the boring scenes were just so boring. Because like, I know the story and you're not doing anything new or interesting. I'm just watching a lady in a dress stand there and say things I know about the plot already.
Yeah.
It's like, But should we start being a little bit more positive? Because
You're fond of me, lobster.
there were some of the actual just like individual moments of this and some of the scope and some of the shots of the way that he built Dread. Like this is what Robert Eggers is an absolute master at. I mean, it's him and Flanagan doing gothic horror like this, and it feels very different than Flanagan. But you talked about the scenes of the castle. Some of my favorite stuff was the plague in the city.
Yeah.
Because that came on really fast, and I didn't expect that, I guess, to be a big part of it. But just these sweeping shots where there's just like men and horses, just like corpses in the street.
Yeah.
That was like the thing that made me really perk up and go like, wow, like that is effective. That was awesome.
And it's not just our characters experiencing this dread.
Yeah.
It's becoming this like the whole city is experiencing it, and you felt that weight. And to go back to the castle, the way it built up, the like psychological impact of meeting like a character this powerful, like when he's on that road and the snow is just coming in through the one crack in the trees and that chariot approaches.
Oh, that was great.
That's like classical fairy tales. Like if I think of Dracula now, that image is going to be what I think of as that moment above all other adaptations.
Yeah.
So there's these amazing moments of visual, not just visual, but like it evokes like a visceral reaction.
Some of the
like,
scenes with Lily Rose Depp being possessed. I mean, that was I mean, we've seen this so many times, right? But this did stand out to me as some of the scenes where they're like holding her down and she's like reciting, speaking in tongues, was effective even amidst the sea of times that I've seen that on screen before.
And I think, I don't want to minimize this because you could talk about this for an hour, but it kind of goes without saying, with an egg, visually, this movie's beautiful. The shot composition, all the stuff they do, the shadows.
All natural light, yeah, and I mean, you could go through and find Easter eggs and themes in every frame, I'm sure.
What they do with shadows, the certain framing of certain shots is just like, every single frame is beautiful.
I could feel myself missing stuff. Like I noticed there was like 4 shots in a row where exactly half of Nicholas Holt's face is in shadow and it's the same one. And I was just like, I don't get it.
Well, they do that a lot with The Count. They do that with Lily Rose Depp's face at the end with her shadow on the pillow that looks like Nosferatu. There's lots of shadow play going on.
It was the kind of thing where like my brain gets that it's doing clever things and I don't know that I totally appreciated the extent of it, but it was obvious that there's an incredible amount of craftsmanship going into this.
And then from a craftsmanship perspective, the sets, the costumes, the like snow.
I mean, the design of the Count absolutely is.
Everything about the actual craft and set design and costuming and all the technical aspects of the filmmaking are impeccable.
You really, I mean, he started this with The Witch where the line that sticks out with me is that you feel like something you shouldn't be watching, right?
Yeah.
Like you feel like somebody's actually gotten a camera on 1800 while something horrific is happening, that's the complete opposite of the Francis Ford Coppola, which is just a stage play.
Yeah, full stage play, very theatrical.
And I've seen, I don't know if I've ever seen anything not by Robert Eggers that so effectively does period.
No, it's insane. I mean, even with The Witch, I remember the soundtrack, he insisted they only use instruments that they would have actually used at that time to create it. They
like piece together scraps of text to create the language, like how English would have been.
Yeah.
This
is why I don't understand why anyone went to this movie that's not like a super geeky horror buff, but anyways, all of those things, I don't want to like not address them, but it's almost just like obvious. Like he's such a talented filmmaker and that's his specialty. I want to call them out. Those are all huge pros of the movie. This is an atmospheric movie. If you want to be like steeped in that gothic horror setting, this is like the distilled version of it that you can inject into your veins. If you want like the thing that Sleepy Hollow is, kind of parroting, this is the like essence of that. This is the OG. If you want it, he did it.
Yeah.
Our issues are more story and plot, like not story, but plotting and pacing and tightening the edit. But from a technical standpoint, it is pretty masterful. There's really nothing from a technical filmmaking standpoint I can point to as like a failure.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that he kind of created the madness feeling while Nick Holt is in the castle, I will say I was a little bothered by how many times they did like a something's happening smash cut to someone waking up in a bed.
Sure, yeah.
That was like 8 times in the first half hour, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. I get it, like I mean, kind of the headline for this movie is, we've used the term a gray nightmare a lot. This is a great nightmare, parentheses, complimentary. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, yeah.
But it very much did feel like, the first 30, 40 minutes very much did feel like a nightmare.
Yes.
Which was cool. Talk a bit about performances?
Yeah.
So I really liked Lily Rose Depp.
Me too.
I thought she was very good. I had not seen, what was that bad show she did at the weekend?
I don't know. Never seen her in anything.
No.
I was really impressed. I thought it might be like stunt casting because she's a hot name right now, and also with the clear sexual undertones of this movie, and I know a lot of her stuff is more in that vein so far.
She was not sexy in this movie.
No, but it's a very sexual story, right? Yeah. So I thought maybe
she was not eye candy in this movie, I guess is my point.
But I thought she was fantastic. I really like Nicholas Holt. He's just made a career of playing a sap.
Yeah.
Just playing a loser, kind of.
Yeah, you want to compare this to the Francis Ford Coppola one?
Yeah, yeah.
Bloody wolves chasing me through some blue inferno.
He's the straight man, right? He did a lot with what he had. I thought he played scared well, but he played like stiff upper lip well. Willem Dafoe. I mean, just
Willem Dafoe and the other doctor, who's the guy from The Witch.
Ralph Ineson.
Yeah. They were both the best performances. I loved them.
And they felt so authentically Victorian.
They did.
Almost more than anyone else.
And I love their reverence for each other. Like, he thinks Willem Dafoe's a quack, but he also still knows he is a doctor who actually knows what he's talking about to some extent, in that mutual respect. I almost wish, talking about twists, if the movie was told from their perspective, I think it could have been more interesting, because they were clearly the best characters. Yeah. They were the clear standouts, I think.
Just do the sequel where they're fighting like the Wolfman now, or the Frankenstein.
Because is that is Van Helsing, Willem Dafoe's character, or like the inspiration for Van Helsing?
Yeah.
Or?
I mean, well, and again, I mean, coming out of Bram Stoker's Dracula, we were saying the exact same thing about Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Where he just strolls in and steals the whole movie
That's
and is
true.
having the most fun.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing again.
It's the same thing.
Nosferatu.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, I feel, was lost in this movie.
Even with everything, he was just kind of the townsfolk, but they also had the townsfolk.
But his performance was also like, they're doing period accurate, and everyone's playing it very nuanced and very down the middle. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson is like, good gods, man.
Yeah.
Like he's in like a Muppets movie. Yeah. And it just didn't really work. And he got a lot of screen time. And that was like, I know they want to be faithful to the original, and I'm sure he's a character in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
But as you said, you could have cut him entirely out of the story and really not suffered anything and saved 20, 25 minutes.
This creature is a force more powerful than evil.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what the themes of this movie. Dracula is an interesting story in Nosferatu Dracula because it is always reflective of the time. And I think it was Welcome to the Basement YouTube channel I've watched forever that originally twigged me onto this, but like horror movies are always a reflection of cultural moments.
Yeah.
But Dracula, because it's the same story, is a really great way to look at different points in time and talk about like what was this culture fearing at this moment.
Yeah.
And like the original Nosferatu was very heavy on the plague aspect. I think it was around the time of Spanish flu, so it was about fears of that. And then you have like Christopher Lee's Dracula. That was very much about the fear of women's sexual awakening and like the dangers of women becoming aware of their own sexuality and that being a loss of power to men. So I think it's interesting to talk about like what was this movie, it's telling the same story I've seen a million times. What was it trying to say about society today? I have my thoughts. I wanted to kind of curious what your thoughts were about this.
For me, the clearest thread that I picked up was that it's like a Harvey Weinstein thing. That this was a powerful, disgusting, abhorrent man, but who, through his immense power, has like, I don't know how the right words for it, but like the way that he's like controlling her via like sexually and getting in between their marriage and even like the relationship, like the control he's exerting over both of them is kind of like an oligarchy thing and like the rich people and the way that they're like toying with common folk and the folk beneath them. Okay. That was kind of how it read to me in as a reflection of modern time.
And they did make a point that they are not wealthy.
Yeah.
Right? That he's doing this for money, for his job. So the power he exerts on them is not about money, but he sells the contract to the Count for money in the movie.
Yeah. And
they are living at Aaron Taylor Johnson's house because they don't have a home yet. So they're definitely, I hadn't thought about that, but that is an interesting angle of like, they are poor and they are being influenced by someone far more powerful.
And some of the sexuality stuff, I mean, we don't need to get into the whole thing of it, but it did feel like she was, you know, with the Count sexually in order to further her life, right? It's kind of like selling her soul sexually to someone very powerful, which does ring true with the whole like Harvey Weinstein Hollywood thing a little bit to me. That was kind of the thread that kind of made sense to me that I thought they were going for, and I think it rang the most in some of the visual stuff with him, just like the way that they painted him as this immensely powerful, charismatic guy, but who's just so gross. Yeah. Like he's not just Christopher Lee in like white powder.
Yeah,
he's like,
who is very attractive in that movie. They made him grotesque.
Yeah.
But he is charismatic.
He's charismatic,
and that was what was surprising, was he's actually kind of charming in the movie. I thought they were going to go full monster mode, but he has some charisma to him, and even his moments with her, he's not like, I'm Nosferatu, I'm gonna get you. He's very like persuasive, even though he's monstrous.
He is, but I think it's also an interesting contrast with the devil from The Witch, who the relationship between Anya Taylor-Joy and the devil and the witch was a lot more. It put a lot more of the blame on Anya Taylor-Joy, where like she kind of chose this.
Yeah.
And like it was painting her more as immoral for going with this. He's tempting her and she chooses it. Whereas with Lily Rose Depp in this one, it felt a lot more like it was, you know, she's making, I mean, it was explicit that she's making a sacrifice in order to like get rid of him.
Right.
Right? And you could even paint it as like, I mean, it's like a honeypot. They get him with a honeypot.
Yeah.
She sleeps with him in order for them to take him down, right? Which,
Yeah.
there you go.
That kind of fills in some of the blanks of what I was thinking about that I didn't have a great answer for. Because my thoughts on this, my biggest takeaway, was that this is a movie about men not being able to accept that women sometimes need to solve their own problem. Because they make it very explicit in this, and again, I don't know if this was in the original Nosferatu,
We didn't watch it.
but she asks for the counts for Nosferatu's attention years before the movie starts.
Yeah.
And his fascination with her and his coming to claim her is her fault in that she at one point wanted it and
She
is now
prayed because she was so lonely. She prayed
Right.
for something, anything, and it
now
woke
she's
him from his
cursed
slumber.
with that,
Yeah.
right? And she consciously wants to be with her husband. She does not want him, but there's this like primal connection that she can't shake and he can't shake, and they're kind of stuck together. And the whole movie is about groups of men, including Aaron Taylor Johnson. Maybe this does add some credence for why he is in the movie. All these men trying to solve this problem through science, through what do they call it? The occult.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe steps in. He provides other alternatives. The doctor tries everything from bloodletting to wearing a corset to all these different things. And they are sure they can figure it out. And I thought my favorite moment of the movie was when Willem Dafoe walks her to the door.
Yeah.
And he says, like, this crusade we're going on tonight, it's not going to work. I think he even calls it like a fool's errand or
Yeah.
something. He's like, go home and make your husband feel like he's important, like he's doing a good job. You're the only one that can stop this. And I know that. And what I found interesting was that those two characters of Lily Rose Depp and Willem Dafoe, they are both portrayed as being old-timey relative in the movie because they are both obsessed with the occult.
Yeah.
And he even says in primal times, you might have been a priestess.
My favorite line of the movie. I thought that was brilliant.
But in modern days, you're a woman with problems, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they are focused on the magic and the occult, which is associated with the past. But in the context of this movie, that actually makes them forward thinking. It makes them realize there is power in women.
Yeah.
And like she has abilities that her husband and her doctor and her husband's friend are not going to be able to solve.
From the beginning, Willem Dafoe is the only one who is actually listening to her, right?
Yeah.
He's like, untie her. Like,
yes.
I want to hear your, like, everyone else is dismissing his mad ravings. Like, I want you to tell it to me. I want to listen.
And it's because he belongs to the counterculture.
Right.
Now, instead of that being like modern counterculture, it's the occult, but it
Right.
fills that niche of being like he thinks differently than everyone else in the movie. He realizes she has this power and empowers her to make that choice and make that sacrifice by herself. And I found that was the emotional payoff of the movie to me, was
Yeah.
that like it's about her claiming that power rather than being a victim, which is what she is the whole movie, waiting for a man
the
to
power
solve
and I guess
this.
the responsibility too. Of it.
Yeah, and
Where
it's
she, like,
and it's not hallmarky because it's a sacrifice. Like she's cursed essentially because of a mistake she made, and the only way she can solve it is by actually doing something about it herself, even if that means taking her own life. But it's
and
her.
giving herself to the count as well,
Yes.
which I think was, yeah, like as important.
And it's like there's this hopelessness in that. Like I can envision myself being in Thomas's position of like, I'm just gonna keep trying stuff until I figure this out because I want to save you, but you can't. She has to solve this herself. And I found that to be really powerful.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take as well, and I don't quite know if our two things mesh together. I think they're both valid. But that's really cool. It's just now occurring to me that them going to the castle and burning the coffin was irrelevant.
Yeah, because he didn't try to go back
He
at
didn't
all.
he just died.
And I like that Willem Dafoe was like this plan's not gonna work, but these guys are really excited about it.
Yeah.
So we'll go do it.
Yeah.
You know you have to do the real job. It's almost like just keeping them busy while she actually resolves the film.
It's coming.
There is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
I'm gonna score this dang Nosferatu.
Score this dang on movie. I feel like you might not have yours locked in yet, so shall I go first?
You should go first.
Critically, damn it, I thought I had mine. I'm gonna give this movie an A- critically.
Okay.
I think I'm kind of putting all the craftsmanship of this movie. I'd feel I think I would feel bad not keeping this in the A's just from how well executed this was from a filmmaking perspective. Everything from the sets to the shots to the act to the performances and the.
Sure.
It is really well put together. It is too long, and it could have been tidied up, which is why I'm giving it A-. But I don't think you get a movie this well constructed very often, particularly within the horror space, and the fact that it is a remake and still has so much interesting stuff to see and talk about. I'm giving it an A-. Personally, it didn't work amazing for me relative to his other ones. I still enjoyed it. Like, I'm glad I saw it. I'm not gonna rewatch this. I'm not gonna watch it over any of his other films. So I'm gonna give it a B personally. I think it ended up being like a solid movie. I'm glad I saw it, but it's certainly not gonna jump up into a tell people they have to go see it list or be on my rewatch or like top horror movies, anything like that. But it was certainly not bad. It's a real mixed bag. So I'm gonna give it a B personally, and critically I'll keep it at A-. That makes me feel no guilt.
Okay. I am critically going to give this a B. In thinking about it, I just think that the things that bothered me and that I think were poorly done are so much more important than the things I liked. The set design was amazing. There were individual moments of brilliance, but I just think as a whole movie, it's not bad, but I just think relative to all of his other movies and to kind of movies in a similar space, I just think this wasn't finished. Maybe that's the wrong term. It wasn't a complete idea. And so I think it was, spikes of A+, but it was jagged enough that I'm bumping it all the way down to a B.
That is a very good point. There are spikes of A+ in this movie.
There are definitely spikes.
Big A+ moments. No matter how you feel about it, there are A+ nuggets.
Yeah. And then personally, I think I'm gonna go as low as a C+. I'm realizing that I just actually did not have that great a time. There were moments I perked up and loved, but I'm exhausted at the idea of rewatching this movie. I have no interest. And I'm just like, we had a couple of points to discuss about some of the themes, but I kind of had to stretch for them, and I don't know that any of I thought Lily Rose Depp was good, but this wasn't the kind of performance that I'm really gonna keep thinking about. Yeah, I don't think that I was that affected by this movie, and I also think I'm having a bit of a thing. I famously don't like David Fincher movies. I don't think low of them. I have a terrible time watching them.
Yes.
Everything he's ever made I've watched, and I've been like, I wish I hadn't watched that. I was miserable the whole time.
But you appreciate that they're well made.
I know there's a lot of craft to it. This one, I felt similarly, where I kind of came out of it, and I'm like, so much of this was sad and gross and unsettling. It didn't feel like it was in service of enough to warrant how kind of shitty I felt watching it.
Okay.
And so that's going to knock it down personally a little bit for me too, and I think it's a C+ is where it's going.
I don't think that's crazy. I think this, I certainly didn't love this movie, so I think this is going to be anywhere from F to A+, depending on the person, more so than most films we've talked about on the channel. So
we'd love to hear from both. Let us know.
Let us know. You like it? You hate it? You like Dracula more? Dracula versus Nosferatu?
There you go.
That would be good.
That'd be good. There's a kung fu fight.
Kung fu fight. Well, that's why you got to see this one, or else
Nicolas Cage.
You won't understand the setup for the. You saw the after credits scene where they get the Wolfman on the team? It's good. You guys make sure you're seeing the after credits.
The Julia Garner Wolfman, who's just like a guy.
Yeah. He teams up with him. They get the Mummy.
The Invisible Man from the Elizabeth Moss one.
Yeah. Scorpion King comes. It's gonna be good next summer. Scorpion King versus Nosferatu.
Nosferatu.